A very happy Tuesday to everyone on this August 10th, second week in a row of doing post-service response this way. We have with us the wonderful Reverend Dennis Reynolds, who gave the talk today, When Our Heart is in a Holy Place. So thank you, Dennis, very much for being here. And the floor is now open for anybody who wants to start.
Well, one thing I might put out there now, Michael, is that, in addition to, any thoughts in terms of my message, I'll put out the invitation I put out in the sermon response time on Sunday, which is, inviting people, if they so wish, to reflect on and share what are the times, places, situations where you feel like, you're in such a place, what I called an aspirational place. One of the is often the case after a sermon, I thought, oh, I could have talked about, those places that, help us feel a sense of awe and humility. And I certainly feel that in, Seebeck sunsets as something that I shared in the Sunday service. So that's another part for me of when my heart's in a holy place, in the place where I have a sense of awe. I remember describing once while walking with someone on Whidbey on a high trail on the island and looking out over a sunset over those same mountains from a different direction, saying, I don't necessarily need a belief in the supernatural when the natural is so super.
Wow, very true. I love it.
Well put. So yeah, go ahead, Martha.
Well, one of the things that I love so much about what you said, and I even wrote it down when I was listening to your service today, that we are loving and caring people, yet sometimes we forget and we come together to practice and to protect. And that is such a mindful thing for someone to, like me, because we often are very hard on ourselves. And so often that we do try to be loving and caring, sometimes we don't come across that way. And we do come together to remind ourselves to practice, and that was just the way, just the whole framing for me for the whole thing. And that really is helpful to remind myself.
Well, and part of the emphasis and part of what led me to wanting to do this service was people had, I don't remember who the questions were, but a couple of people had said that they had interest in knowing a little bit more about universalism and what's the core of that teaching. And I think that little piece that says we are loving and caring people, we are loving and caring beings, that's our nature. And that's what the universalists have taught for a long time. There's a story of Hosea Ballou, who was circuit riding with the Baptist preachers, and they stopped for a campfire dinner. And the Baptist preacher couldn't understand how you could be good without a fear of hellfire and damnation to scare you into being good. And he said to Ballou, he said, if I hit you over the head and stole your horse, there would be no eternal punishment. And Ballou turned to him and says, if you were a universalist and fully loving, such a thought would never have entered your mind.
Yeah. Touche. Yeah.
That old guilt trip didn't happen.
Well, and that was a very popular question. I used to be a big fan of the Atheist Experience on YouTube. And, invariably somebody would call in with a question of like, if there's no ultimate arbiter of justice, it means that we can't categorically say that acts are truly evil, and this is something that William Lane Craig, who's a Christian philosopher, very worth following, very worth reading, but he was very popular in saying that if there is no God, if there is no arbiter of morality, then nothing can truly be said to be good or evil. The Holocaust, to stealing a candy bar. And my response to that was always, that's not true, because you have the judgment of the victims. that
Mhm.
makes it wrong.
Well, and a humanist perspective would say if you harm humanity,
Right.
if you harm, or a religious naturalist would say if we recognize and understand that we've disrupted the order of all life.
Mhm.
Mhm.
We've severed the threads of the web, to
Right.
use a metaphor that's kind of related to, Chief Seattle's kinds of messages.
JC wanted to interject something.
A young man came to the door last week and 22 years old and was inviting me to his Baptist church. And he started out by telling me that when he was about 15, he was doing a lot of things that he knew were wrong.
Mhm.
There was that in him that knew they were wrong. And when a minister read to him something from the Bible that he connected to that concept of, oh, that's what that's about. I know those were wrong. And so he went on to tell me how this gave him his belief in God and the Bible and the whole business. And of course, I just smiled quietly and listened. And then I said, because he was concerned for me, because I didn't believe in hell and how did I know how to be good? And I said, well, when I was your age, I had the same experience you did. Only I kept knowing that I was right in what I did, or I was wrong in what I did. I could tell that. It's inside us that we know that. And so then we went on, and he's 22 and I'm 85. And I pointed that out and I said, over time, I have come to realize that I know right from wrong. And that's part of a consciousness that we call God, because we don't have any other word for it. And I said, I would love to talk to you when you're 85 and see how you have, see what your source has been, because you had the initial experience at 15 that you knew what was right and what was wrong. And that someone gave you an experience or a way for that to be a belief. That's very handy. But I smiled and I said, I think you're going to find when you're my age that you will pretty much believe as I do. And he was very pleasant, of course, but it really, he left thinking, I'm not sure this was a good idea.
Wow.
Powerful, Jack.
Mm.
It'd be nice if he came back and you got to talk some more,
It would.
actually.
Yeah.
If he was
One
open to
time,
it.
a minister from one of, not a Baptist church, something less easily identified, came and he had his wife with him. And I did something similar to that. And his wife was really pissed off.
Oh, no.
He said, as if I didn't get it, that this is not the person you disagree with. But anyway, he asked me some interesting questions and I had some interesting answers. And she was really not happy.
Well, Kim wanted to,
We engage people who knock on the door.
right. Yeah. So Kim wanted to go next, but I wanted to give Dennis a chance to respond.
No, I don't have a whole lot to
Okay.
say beyond what was said.
Okay, great. Go ahead, Kim.
I'm doing going to be doing music leading job at church in 2 weeks. And so I've been writing about how climbing up the mountains and having God come along with you and help you along the rugged road of the mountains, and how when you go up to the mountains, it really changes your perspective of life, because you see all the beauty in the world, and you realize, wow, there's nothing better than a bunch of mountains to look at. And when you're down, you always look down, and you're always kind of moping around, your head's down. You need to look up to the mountains and look up to the source where God is, and that will help you in your struggles. So that's in a nutshell what I've been trying to get my message across. So I try to talk to Jesus every day, and as if he was in my room sitting there, and I try to not yell at him too much. And
Fair enough.
Too much.
try to
Jesus.
listen to him more than just keep talking, So that was my take on the sermon, was how I come to God for things. I know you guys are universal, and I don't know what you believe, but that's what I believe.
I think we've talked before, Kim, on other Sundays. It depends on which one of us you ask.
Right.
And I mean, it's like part of the stuff that I noted in the Reverend Kimberly, who I talked about, her not liking the song because she didn't think it was universalist enough, and offered conditions, that she described herself as a radical universalist with process tendencies. Well, I didn't even get into what process theology, which is a whole thing. And part of it was constructed by this guy, Alfred North Whitehead, who had to create words that didn't exist before to describe his rather complex theological constructs. I find it fascinating, but I'm probably not going to preach a whole lot about process theology because it's pretty complex.
I think
Okay.
Kim,
I'm going to start driving, so you may lose me. I don't know.
Yeah,
okay.
thanks
I
for
gotta go to my
contributing.
Bible study.
Yeah, have fun.
Thanks for coming.
See you later if I don't see you.
Yeah, go ahead, Anne Claire.
I was just gonna say what she was saying there, though. I can really identify with it. It's sometimes easier. Maybe it's because it's just getting us out of our own regular space, going to the mountains or going to wherever our place is to feel that connection. And that is too what I got from the sermon.
Yeah, it's true that, regardless of what faith tradition you belong to,
Exactly.
not to dominate the conversation, but I used to I had a teacher, Pandit Harish Bakshi, and he taught me Indian music, and we got to the end of like 2 or 3 years of study, and he told me that if we were in a traditional Indian music setting, then he would send me off into the jungle for a year to be alone and isolated and practice my voice so that I could discover my own voice, and there is something to be said for that. Muhammad was said to have been in retreat into the cave when he got the revelation from God, yeah.
Just like the Aborigines send their young ones on a walkabout for them to do the transition. Yeah.
Moses went to the mountain. Jesus, went to the desert.
Exactly.
Many profound teachers who wrote down things, or people wrote down what they reportedly said. I won't get into that whole discussion about about sacred texts and edited and translated and all of those pieces. But many practices, yogic practices, are intended to take us to a different place within.
Oops.
But there's certainly the inspiration that's available to us out there.
Oops, I don't know where I went.
You're there.
Yeah, you're still here.
All I see is a list of participants. I'll find it. I'll figure out what I've done. Anyway.
Go ahead, Martha.
I don't often have these real deep feelings about things. I guess I'm more of anyway, I'm learning more to do that. But I remember once climbing up Watson Falls, and it was a overcast day, but the sun sort of filtered through. And I don't know if any of you have done Walton Falls, but it's not that big of a climb, but it's a lot of switchbacks and a lot of decomposed wood and things growing and everything. And the colors were muted and filtered by the light. And the smells were all very organic, very pleasant, very warm. And then this water, this mist, just coming down. When we got up to the top, and it was all crummy and cloudy. I was with a couple other friends, and Joe was coming along, and he had his camera with him, and he came around the bend and he got up to the top. And just as he got to the top, clouds parted, the sun came, and he got a beautiful shot of the waterfall. Okay. But as I was going up, I'm thinking, if there is truly a heaven, this is what I would imagine it would be like.
Mhm.
Just the way it affected me way deep inside. And I don't have that feeling so often. I do get into my head in my garden and all that kind of thing, and I forget about, but it was a very meaningful. I know I'm really affected by beautiful, earthy, natural surroundings, water, rocks, that kind of stuff. Thank you for listening.
Yeah, having those experiences in nature, it's like a glimpse of getting high without the need of any substance,
Mhm.
because the only thing I can liken those experiences to is when I've done mushrooms, and everything becomes like super sharp, and you can actually, it's not
Yeah,
that
this is
funny.
true.
People have used psychedelics to commune with God
Yeah.
for ages.
Forever.
And that's some of what, the results have been of, fasting.
Yeah.
Or spending
Mm.
40 days in the desert with minimal intake, it
Right.
changes your neurochemistry. So yeah, I mean, some of the stuff I just listened into a piece on a webinar of the use of psychedelics in therapeutic settings, which is now
Yep.
legal with appropriately trained people in this state and in Berkeley, California. And there was a rabbi on, and she was talking about how many of the vision accounts in the Old Testament
Mhm.
certainly seem to be somebody in some kind of altered mind state
Mhm.
of what they were describing, and whether or not it came from a dream, from the subconscious, it
Mhm.
was certainly not conscious, rational
Right.
thought.
Right.
Or in Christian scripture, the book of Revelation is trippy, and the metaphors are powerful, and
But so is Job. I mean, all
so
throughout the
that's what I
Bible.
was saying, the Old
Yeah.
Testament ones, but then I was just bringing up a Christian
Yeah.
example.
Yeah.
What do you think? Jacob's ladder and
Oh God.
Yeah,
Yeah. Or
exactly.
those kinds
Ezekiel.
of images are pretty,
Yeah.
Ezekiel and the wheel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Heck yeah.
saw a
Yeah.
wheel way up in the middle of the
Yeah.
air, it's
Yeah.
just,
Well, the Nation of Islam, the Black Muslims here in America, believe that God lives on a spaceship. And so when Ezekiel saw the wheel, what they believe that those are actually like the circular spaceships, and that's God's home. Yeah.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I'm the only Louis Farrakhan fan in the group. I take it.
That was something in the back of the recesses of my mind. I had heard that way
Yeah,
back.
I knew that.
Yeah.
As because I'm old and I remember.
In 2,000 years, it will not seem
No, it won't.
preposterous.
It,
You know?
and you never know what's going to happen in a couple of days. I mean,
No, I know, and I know it's not fashionable to like Louis Farrakhan these days, but
hey, you
I-
do what you do.
I do. Yeah.
If you're well read and you are familiar with things, you have a better judgment of what's going on today.
Right.
That's what I feel. Better
well,
thoughts.
some would suggest though that he rewrote the teachings of Elijah Muhammad.
I'm sure that's true.
Yes, yeah.
Part of it. I mean, there are a whole version of prophets or prophetic voices who have kind of restructured imagery
Mhm.
and still claimed link to a tradition. In South Africa, there's a faith community called Shembe, that is both a merging of some biblical teachings and ancient Zulu mythologies. So,
Interesting. I didn't know that.
yeah, I wrote a paper on Shembe when I was in grad school.
Nice. Okay. All right. So if it's okay with everybody, I would love to get back to Dennis's initial question of where are you, or and correct me if I'm getting this wrong, Dennis, but where are you, or what are you doing? What is the environment when your heart is in a holy place?
Well, and I would just add the part, and I'm trying to remember the exact Joyce Poley words about the light that shines within. So it's sometimes it's not all out there.
Right.
Exactly.
It merges within. And for me, as someone who gets to go to Elliott Camp, along with 84 other Unitarian Universalists, it's a small gathering compared to the 250 it is most years. It's about Sangha too. And, you folks gathered together in Sangha on Sunday morning.
Yes.
There was a strong desire to be together at the same time and in the same place. So, what communities, what external situations, what internal states or practices, create that holy space for you.
Right. So I saw JC's hand go up.
Well, I thought of your request of where is such a place for us? And there are many places for me, but for our fellowship, 58 years ago, when Christina, who is now 60, was 2, and Brett August was 2, we went almost yearly up to Email Creek, a certain campground up there on Little River. And what I remember is one of the senior girls, our worship services started with flute. So across the river and away where I couldn't see her came the flute, waking us up and coming together. And the rule was try to always to say yes to what the kids want to do, but go with them. And I remember how many years we sat around a wide place in the river there where we watched the children who couldn't swim last year could swim this year. And this year they could go further. They could go to the other side of the river. They grew. It was just wonderful. And the things that happened there at Email Creek were amazing. Lori and I set up worship experiences, like we took a group of kids up off the trail with no language that they knew. They had to make up a word to go if they had something to say to somebody. And tell them what the word, show them what the word meant, And I remember turning to look and see the little ones who couldn't climb over the log with their hands up, and the big boys, grumpy big boys, reaching down and helping the little ones up on the log. The things that happened in that space make that, for me, a incredibly rich place. And when Ian was 5, some years later, that's where he wanted to go for his birthday. So we went there and we had his birthday party there with grown-ups and things. And Lori and I had a time when we spent a lot of time talking, and we found a log kind of up by the campsite, and we lay head to head on that log and floated all the way down to where the log was going to go over, and we got off and we pushed it all the way back up and we rode it all the way down again, talking about mothering our children and what life was like. So to me, that's a special place. Right now, it's in my memory because I haven't been there in years. But the things are beauty, growth, change, lives opening up. We were up there a day when people brought a woman who had a girl who had come from a foreign country to spend the year in Roseburg. And the first they brought her from getting her off the train or plane or whatever it was and brought her up there. And that was her first experience of our group. And it was just lovely. So those are the things that I think make a place special, is when it supports loving relationships.
Great. Great.
And memory can be holy.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to come in then. What you just said, Dennis, couldn't be more perfect for a couple of things, but what in particular I wanted to share with you. I don't know if you know Larry Flanagan from Elliott or from Roseburg. Larry currently is pushing 100 and he has Alzheimer's. And I've spent quite a bit of time, but I want to talk in particular about 5 hours of that time, going through Larry's papers. And what I've been asked to do is go through them and make decisions about what might best be done with those papers. And I spent about a total of 5 hours sitting there going through every experience that he ever had at Elliott and the workshops he took. And to back up, Larry initially started out his life as a priest, and so Jesuit. And so he's had a very interesting and very full life, and so this was a piece of his life so linear because he went back every year, and he went back often several times a year. And each experience included my experiences in the folder, the workshop brochure for that year, the things that he had attended, his notes about them, his thoughts for future sermons that he might do based on experiences that he had. And he did a lot of sermons for our congregation. He was also a licensed clergy, so he did marriages. And he was also president of our board at different times. And so in each part of his life, I've been able to just sort of follow along with him. And part of why I think I'm doing this is because I got to meet Larry about 45 years ago under very different settings, and we have some similar kinds of backgrounds. But what that's been for me is almost a holy journey with a good friend that's no longer available, but the most intimate kind of sharing and opportunity to just look in and know him and see him and learn about him. So that's been the last 4 or 5 days, I guess. So I'm really full of that experience and don't really have any other words for it other than making decisions, as I said, about what will happen to some of his things. Some people have asked me if I'm saving his sermons, and it's all still, kind of being divided, but that to me has been amazing, to be allowed into another person's world, especially when they volunteer and they're able to, share it with me is an amazing experience. But to have journeyed with Larry in the way that I have is equally so. For myself, though, my experiences are connected to some very, what I would consider special to me, place out of doors, alone. Believe it or not, sometimes naked, because I got so overwhelmed with how beautiful it was. I just took all my clothes off and laid down in the grass in the sun and, just sort of went with it. And for me, the beauty of those experiences, and one in particular, is that it became an experience of 35, 40 years of my life that I was able to use 4, 5, 6 times a day. And what I did was I took the emotional connectedness of that all, and I used it as a way, I was a psychotherapist, I used it as a way of taking what went on in the past hour, putting it where it needed to be, and clearing and cleansing and opening and freeing so that I was then ready for the next person that was going to come in. And it made also my work really special too, because I just felt I approached each person with a wholeness and a freshness that had nothing to do with anything that had gone on before that. So I think that's why I really have cherished so much the few alone experiences that I hold on to. And I guess a meditation experience for me is also that kind of thing. It's an alone experience. And one of the things that I do has been a healing experience. I had a couple of serious autoimmune disorders like lupus and myasthenia. And I would do a meditation every day, sometimes twice a day, and I would journey through my body, looking for those lupus cells. And it's elaborate, I don't need to go into it, but just moving them through and flushing them out and trusting that they were gone and feeling very companioned in that. I don't use the word God, but just feeling very companioned in that process and knowing, without a doubt that when I went and got the next set of tests, that they were going to be just fine, just fine. So that would be the kind of experiences that I would bring to mind.
There's certainly a sense that, I remember a member of, it was a new member class during my internship, wanting to be Unitarian Universalist in the Port Townsend congregation, who said he'd figured out what UUs have in common, and that's a belief in something larger than ourselves. And that's manifest in a whole lot of forms. I also remember, and I echo that kind of feeling, a comment from my favorite professor in seminary, who David Mumbaugh, who talked about the irrelevant debates between atheism and theism. And he thought it was rather irrelevant because the relevant sense was a sense of awe and reverence, sense of true humility. And as someone who also was a lifelong Universalist prior to the merger, a deep faith in the human capacity to be loving, and the human call to be loving. And so I always echo his thing about the atheist debate he felt was irrelevant. So what do we call it? Sometimes I think it's an issue of semantics, of naming the unnameable. I mean, the Hebraic traditions sometimes use different names for God, whether it was Elohim or Jehovah, and sometimes it was the unnameable. I don't have to name it to know that it's there
Yeah.
That's for sure.
when I experience it personally.
I never saw myself as a person who had religion. I guess
How long
most,
you been hanging out with the UUs?
well, I spent most of my life being a lesbian, and religion and lesbianism weren't kind together. But I never really was religious at any point in my life, in terms of God or church or regular attendance and anything. And certainly not since I was, maybe 9 or 10 years old. So I guess my sense of religion when my brother and I played hooky instead of going to Sunday school was we would go to the lake and we would kind of toss rocks in the lake and skim them and enjoy the Sunday morning and pray that Mother didn't know that we didn't do what we were supposed to do, if you can call that praying.
The Church of Creation.
Absolutely, we're on the same page too.
Yeah.
It would be nice to hear from somebody who hasn't spoken yet. So
Well, I'll speak up.
there you go.
My special place, I've lived in this house. I was born in Myrtle Creek, and this is my original home, and came back to it after many, many years. And as a kid, my special places were the little thickets in the yard. I've got a big yard next to a busy highway with neighbors, but it's a half-acre property and wooded and fruit trees and wild fruit trees, whatever. And in the wild spaces, I would make a little room, and I can still go there today. And yeah, it's special and nice. You feel connected to everything and nothing.
Mhm.
Well, and that's, I put on the list a corner in one's own garden.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm still having to craft mine because the bulldozers took lots of what was before away to clear the site to build a house on it, but
Mm.
I'm planting lots and watering lots. So.
Mhm.
Yeah, I saw Paul, you unmuted.
Yes,
Yeah.
just in case you're gonna call on me.
Yeah. Well, yeah, for me, I would say the times that I've been most happy, especially lately, has been communing with others over music or religion or, discussion, kind of like doing what we're doing.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, yeah, go for it, Paul.
Yeah, I figured you were gonna call me, so I might as well
Yeah, right.
get a jump on it. I just wanted to say that I like Martha's comments about communing with nature. I grew up next to the beach and have watched hundreds of sunsets and, watched the sky and the clouds. And I always find that when I'm around nature and just kind of lose my focus about my ego and myself and just let myself kind of like flow into the natural surroundings. I find that very transcending. And this is such a wonderful place where we're all living right now, with all the trees and the green and the water. Oregon is such a beautiful state and makes it very easy to go outside and look at trees or look at the sky and into that special place. So
Mhm.
I agree with you, Martha.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Right. And Glennis, you also,
I did. I have to agree with you when it comes to playing music with people. That is a happy place. And it
Mhm.
really does take you out of yourself. And it's especially awesome when it sounds good too. And
Yeah.
it's just all coming together. But when I was a kid, I had a couple of places, and one of them was my tree fort.
Mhm.
I had tried to build a tree fort myself at mind you, I was age 4. My father had a ladder leaning up in the apple tree. So I climbed up there with a couple of sticks and a hammer and a couple of nails, and I was going to make a tree fort. And instead, the ladder went with me on backwards, and I landed on my back and just winded, nothing hurt or anything. But my father built a very solid tree fort the day after that.
Yes.
And so I was up there. That's where I read all the mystery books I could get my hands on, had talks with my best friend about boys, ate green apples. And basically it was my go-to place to get back to myself.
Mhm.
But we moved from there when I was 12 up to the top of the hill above the fairgrounds. And for a while I was just kind of lost because it was away from all of my friends. They all went to the other junior high school. So I was going to, place where I never had any friend, didn't know anybody. And it was a painful, hard move for me. Plus, my household was, let's just say, somewhat dysfunctional at best. And so my go-to place had to change because the tree fort was gone. I climbed to the top of the hill that we lived on, which is actually Mount Nebo. It's the very top of Mount Nebo. And there you get a 360 degree view of the whole town. And I would sit up there for hours just letting it be my power spot and letting it be my
Wow.
recovery spot. And
Mhm.
I think that anymore now, I almost don't need to get off and away. I can do this right here now if I really want to.
Yeah.
But I think in those early days, that's where I learned to do that.
So there are places where practice flows more easally is the sense that
Mhm.
but one of my Buddhist teachers, my primary Buddhist teacher, talked about, we did Thich Nhat Hanh tradition, walking meditation, and looking for serene spots. And he said, I can walk serenely in an airport. And it's like, well, you've been practicing longer than I have, Larry. I'm in here when I'm in an airport. I'm not here. But Larry would walk through the airport, centered in himself. So
Mm.
he'd had more practice.
well, and something that I was thinking of when we were talking about the where are you part of when your heart is in a holy place is that it's kind of a strange mystical experiences that spaces will kind of retain the spirit or the personality of those who have occupied it, right? And it's something that I can't explain rationally, but there, it could just be purely psychological, but you can walk into a space and kind of experience, for lack of a better word, like the psychic residue of who's
Mhm.
been there.
Yes.
And I wonder why that is,
Don't know.
who knows?
Don't know, but I don't have to know to feel it.
You're right.
Yes.
It's
I
true.
have a comment
Yeah.
regarding that. Assisi is permeated with that feeling.
Yes.
Mhm.
Know that you're in a special place, and it's profound.
And when you
I
go
thought so.
downstairs to the grave,
Mhm.
4 other graves there, you don't even want to talk.
No,
Just
Mm,
be.
No.
no, exactly.
Hmm.
Well, and even secular places, I remember when I walked into the basement room in the Orangerie, which is where Monet's Nymphes, the water lily paintings are
Mhm.
displayed. I dropped to my knees.
Mhm.
It
Oh
was
my
so
gosh.
awe-inspiring and humbling.
Mhm.
And so great human creation can do that. And it happens in cathedrals and stunning architecture.
Yes.
And it happens
Absolutely.
in
You know, you were
consider
talking
inspired art.
Mhm. Go ahead, Anne Claire.
earlier about music and playing music, Michael and Glennis, but it happens on the other side too for me,
Mhm.
hearing it,
Mm.
you
Yeah.
know, and those experiences when I don't know what you call it other than the energy, when the music, when you can feel it go through you. I don't know how much closer to God I've ever felt than those times that, you know, not all music has come through me, but
Mhm.
especially opera, just in person, it's something else. And I
Yeah.
guess it's the vibration and the
Yes.
energy, but it's very powerful. So it's not just when I imagine when you're playing it, maybe 10 times more than, I don't know, you've been on both sides of it. What do you?
Well, for me, it's always been kind of like a channeling. It's just,
Yes.
it is absolutely through me. It
Yes.
comes through and it comes out with the fingers.
Wow.
I don't know about Michael, but that's how it is for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead, Martha.
Well, when you were saying that, when we were talking about psychedelic mushrooms
Yeah.
and altered
She's still
states.
back on the mushrooms.
Now, wait a minute, there's a reason. Those of you who know me, I have never touched marijuana. Honest to God, I've never touched drugs. Honest to God. I know I'm scaredy cat, I guess. Wine, but I'm a person that doesn't need to have a drink to have a great time. A couple of things come to mind. Singing in major groups in these large places where the sound just, and you're part of this massive choir or whatever.
Mhm.
I've had goosebumps over my total body.
Yeah.
And there was also a
That's it.
time where I was in a bar and I was in my 40s with my girlfriends, and I jumped on the bar and did the opening number of a chorus line. I had not had a thing to drink, but it was on my mind. I guess maybe I'd just seen it down in LA. I don't know. But I mean, music and performing and doing it just, it transforms something in me where I'm in
Yep.
a different place and I'm just, I don't care what the world thinks kind of thing, So, anyway.
Yeah, I didn't even bring up in Elliott at CBEC the music that emerges all around the camp. There's a banjo player who sort of channels Pete Seeger,
Oh,
wanders around playing music to kids. When Suzanne went to UU camp when she was a little girl, Pete Seeger was there.
Wow.
The only work Pete Seeger could get at that point in his career was UU summer camps because he'd been blackballed.
oh,
That's right.
But
I
you
have
know,
got
so
to go.
music can certainly resonate, and Michael's the guy who can tell you about, forms that have intentionally created that vibration to create something mystical and spiritual.
yeah.
Sense of kirtan and other. I know a little bit from my world religion studies. Sanskrit alphabet is organized around the parts of one's body or one's head that vibrates when you make a particular sound. So the chant song, the musical form,
Oh, yeah.
is intended to create a vibration that has a profound impact on you spiritually and opens up possibilities in different kinds of ways. So yeah, music is, definitely one of those ways to get.
Everybody play Krishna Das now.
Yeah.
Yeah, Krishna Das. I went the first time I heard Krishna Das, Suzanne took me and I went, oh, Suzanne's taking me to this other woo-woo thing. you know, because she's been a lot more woo-woo than I am, and I kind of went, whoa,
Yeah, yeah.
you know,
Well,
and
Michael, I can see it now. You're gonna have to have some workshops. in the
Right,
basement.
right. Yeah, well, for anybody who's interested, I did an interview with Surinder Singh. And it's on
Yeah.
it's on the channel, the YouTube channel for the
It is, yeah.
church. And he goes into quite deep detail about the ways that music, will connect you with the divine,
Mhm.
because for him it's almost like a scientific process,
Mm.
that different tonal centers will activate different things. He explains it much better than I do, but the interview's on there. We talked for about an hour.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And yes, I remember you mentioning that long time ago. I'm gonna
Yeah.
write that down because I have,
I've seen it. It bears repeating.
okay,
actually.
yeah.
on the vibration of drumming, and part of what inspired me to, stretch myself, and I'm doing a drum workshop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm not a musician. I'm terrified. But I'm going there anyway.
You will love it.
Right.
Good.
Is when in 2016 I went to Standing Rock, and spent hours at the edge of a drum circle,
Hmm.
and the
Mhm.
vibrational energy was profound.
Yeah,
Yep.
well, in Indian classical music, all of their classical rhythms are derived directly from recitation of sacred poetry, or of the Vedas. That all of their traditional classical rhythms come from speech rhythms of reciting sacred scripture.
Mm.
So, yeah, it's a fascinating history, but yeah. Whew, okay, maybe we could have one or two more questions, comments.
I think a follow-up on the Krishna Das thing, and
Yeah.
that kind of brings it, broadens it a little bit, is he said, we're going to do one from a very different tradition. And we launched into Jesus on the main line. Tell him
Yes.
what you want.
Okay.
Call him up, tell him what you want. I mean, one of the gifts of going to seminary in Chicago was in January, which was freezing, was the Martin Luther King service
Mhm.
every year at the University of Chicago in their big, huge chapel
Oh,
with
yeah.
gospel choirs that rocked the place and really touched your soul.
Mhm.
Wow.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's where my dad went to school, and I'm from Chicago. I know what you mean. Yeah.
I just want to say as we close
Mm.
that all that you've been talking about has been essentially rejected by science as being a reliable aspect of reality. But we obviously know this is a reality aspect of reality.
Yes.
And so that's why these two books, Upside Down Thinking and Upside
yes.
Down Living,
Yes.
are really important. They're easy to read, and I really recommend them, and I will at some point do a sermon on them. But
Mm.
Upside Down Thinking is how science thinks of itself. And it's the end of learning anything, because they will not admit to the energies we have been talking about
Mhm.
Uh-huh.
as being real, or as having anything to do with a beginning, a middle, or an end. And just as I left the room, somebody was saying that somebody they heard talking about this had a scientific attitude toward it. And it's really important.
Quantum physics has really rocked the rational thinkers
Right.
sometimes. The rationalists amongst us. There are things beyond our knowing.
I think
Yes.
that you should watch Rupert Sheldrake's TED Talk that was
Oh.
literally banned. And he gives you 10 instances or more of why science got it wrong.
Mm.
And he is a scientist, and he studies consciousness and animal human communication, ESP, all these forbidden nonsensical things. Along with the Institute for Noetic Sciences.
Yes.
Doing real research to substantiate.
Yeah.
This.
Well, a lighter version that comes to mind in terms of, music is Iris DeMent's song, Let the Mystery Be.
Yeah.
I don't know if you don't know that song, it's key to my theology.
Mm.
What the afterlife may be or what, or eternity may hold. It was my beloved sister-in-law's theme song after she had a terminal diagnosis as she faced the end of her life. As for me, let the mystery be. Experience what we experience in the time we're here. I'll share as we move towards a closing time. I had a profound day yesterday. In the morning, I got a WhatsApp call from my son in London and spent some time just staring over video of my 3-day-old grandson.
Oh.
That afternoon, a friend from the congregation here had invited me to meet her father, and we kept having difficulty scheduling it. And we weren't able to schedule it while he was communicative. And I went and spent an hour and a half with him and his daughter. Chuck Reinhardt was a UU minister for many decades. And I felt an energy in that room that was profound. And I left and I came home and wishing I had had time with Chuck when he was verbal. And his daughter texted me an hour and a half later and said, "Dad's gone." And I felt honored to be in his presence when
He was waiting for you.
What a day. That's the
Wow.
circle of all life.
Wow.
Yeah. And an hour and a half before leaving. And
Wow.
what does all that mean in the scope of things? I don't know for sure, but as for me, let the mystery be.
Thank you.
Amen.
I think that's the right way to end it. Dennis, it's always a
thank you,
pleasure.
Dennis.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you,
So-
Dennis.
But see you in September.
So just
Yeah.
a quick heads up for everybody with the rise in COVID cases, we are looking at what to do and how to make sure that everybody's safe and everybody's well taken care of. So hopefully we'll have an update for you very soon. So
Glad to hear, because
yeah.
I heard that Douglas County is setting.
Oh,
some records.
yeah.
Pretty
We're having
bad
a meeting
records.
tomorrow to make
to
make our comment.
so in the meantime, everybody stay safe and we will see you later.
Stay healthy.
All right.
Thank
you,
Bye.
Michael.
Okay. Bye-bye, everybody.
Michael, thank you, Dennis. Thank you.